My roommate walked out of her bedroom wearing my shirt. Not by accident. Not because she'd grabbed the wrong thing in the dark. The shirt was folded on my chair. She would have had to choose it, pick it up, and put it on deliberately, and then walk out into the kitchen where I was standing with my coffee, looking like a woman who had made a decision and was waiting to see if it cost her anything. I looked at her. She looked at me. And then she said, quietly, like she was telling me something she'd been working up to for weeks, "It's easier than telling you how I really feel." I didn't say anything. I don't think I breathed for a full 4 seconds. That is how I found out that the woman who argued with me about the thermostat, who stole my leftovers without apology and labeled her yogurt with my name as some kind of domestic joke, had apparently been feeling something the whole time. Something she couldn't say out loud. Something that fit better in a borrowed shirt at 7 in the morning than it did in any sentence she'd tried to build. I'm getting ahead of myself. My name is Daniel Reyes. I'm 34. I run the logistics operations for a mid-sized regional furniture distributor, which means my job is essentially to make sure the right couch arrives in the right city at the correct time, without catastrophe. I am decent at this. Not spectacular, just decent. I've built a career out of being reliable in ways that nobody notices until something goes wrong. I live in a 2-bedroom apartment on the 4th floor of a building that smells faintly of other people's cooking and has a lift that works approximately 80% of the time. I adopted a plant 2 years ago and have kept it alive, which I consider to be the clearest evidence that I am ready for the responsibilities of adult life. Her name was Nora Vance. 29. She worked in digital marketing, the kind of job that sounds glamorous until she explained that it mostly involved arguing with strangers online on behalf of brands that sold cleaning products. She'd moved into the spare bedroom 18 months ago after her lease fell through, at the same time my previous flatmate moved to Edinburgh. And we'd found each other through a mutual friend who had described us both, separately, as very easy to live with, but slightly suspicious of enthusiasm. She was sharp-faced and quick with words, with dark hair she kept in a low braid when she was working and let loose when she'd had a bad day, which meant I'd learned, without ever being told, to read her mood from the doorway before she'd opened her mouth. She owned an embarrassing number of houseplants, kept a sticky note on the kettle that said "don't," as a complete sentence directed at nobody and everyone, and had a small blue phone case with a cracked corner she'd never replaced. Because, she'd said once, "It's already broken, so now I don't have to be careful." That cracked phone case would become important later. The way we lived was this: comfortable. Specific. We had rules we'd never written down. She got the kitchen on weekend mornings until 10. I had standing permission to steal her good coffee if I replaced it. She was allowed to talk to me during the film if the film was bad. Her judgment was final on what qualified. I was not allowed to reorganize the pantry without a 48-hour notice period, which she'd insisted on after what she called the incident with the lentils, which I will not be relitigating here. We were friends. Clearly and genuinely friends. What I had never let myself examine too closely was whether, underneath the comfortable mechanics of our daily life, there was something that wanted to be something else. It turned out I'd been the only one not examining it. It started on a Tuesday in November, which is the correct month for the ground to shift under you without warning. The building's boiler had given out the night before, not our flat specifically, but the whole 4th floor, which meant no hot water. A phone call at 11 p.m. from our building manager using the specific tone of voice that meant "this is not my fault," and also "there is nothing I can do," and Nora appearing in the kitchen doorway in her coat over her pajamas, holding her wash bag, looking at me with an expression I could not fully read. "I'm going to Elena's," she said. Alana was her friend from university, who lived 3 streets over. Alana's boiler works? Alana's building manager is competent. This seemed fair. I'll go to the gym, I said. Shower there. She stood in the doorway for a beat longer than was necessary. Something moved across her face, not quite hesitation, not quite something else. You could use her place too, she said, if you wanted. She wouldn't mind. That's fine. Jim's on my way to work. She nodded. She looked at me for one more second. Then she left. I stood in the kitchen afterwards and thought she looked at me like she meant something else. And then I put that thought away very carefully. The way you put away a glass you're not sure is clean. You're not ready to use it, but you're not ready to throw it out either. I went to the gym, showered, went to work, moved furniture across 3 counties without incident. That evening she was home before me, sitting on the sofa with her laptop and her cracked blue phone case on the coffee table, and she looked up when I came in and said, "The boiler's back. Alana says you owe her a coffee for the offer. Tell her I accept." Nora looked at her screen. She was smiling slightly. I noticed, and then I noticed that I'd noticed, and I made myself go and heat up leftovers. That is hiding with better branding. 3 weeks after the boiler incident, I came home to find Nora on the phone in the kitchen, pacing in the small circle she always paced when the conversation was difficult. I could hear, not the words, not quite, but the register. The quieter, more careful version of her voice that she used when she was saying something true to someone she trusted. I set my bag down near the door as quietly as I could and went to hang my coat. I wasn't trying to listen. I want to be clear about that. I walked back past the kitchen doorway because that was the only route to my room, and she had her back to me, and what I caught was 7 words. Said in the specific tone of someone arriving at a conclusion they've been resisting. I don't know. I think it might be him. Then she heard me, or sensed me, and turned around. For a half second she looked startled. Then she recovered, smoothly, quickly, and said into the phone, "I'll call you back," and set it face down on the counter. "Sorry," I said. "Didn't mean to interrupt." "You didn't." She picked up the kettle. "Tea?" Sure, she made 2 cups. We sat at the kitchen table for 20 minutes talking about her week, my week, the building manager's continued optimism that the hallway light would be fixed by Christmas. At no point did either of us reference the 7 words. At no point did I ask who she'd been talking to or what they'd been discussing. But she'd set the phone face down. Nora never set her phone face down. I noticed that. I noticed that I noticed it. I turned my attention back to the tea. That night I lay in bed and thought about the way she'd looked at me in the kitchen doorway during the boiler incident. The half second before she recovered on the phone call. The 7 words. The inverted phone. I thought, these things could mean several things. I thought, do not become a person who reads a novel into a cup of tea. I went to sleep. This was not my finest act of self-awareness. A week later, on a Friday evening, her younger sister came to pick up a jacket she'd left here months ago. Nora was still at work, running late, had texted me. Could I let Bex in? And so I answered the door and poured her sister a glass of water and made approximately 4 minutes of small talk while we waited for Nora. Bex was 25, funnier than her sister in a louder key, and had the quality that some people have of saying the true thing without fully realizing they've said it. She looked around the flat. She looked at Nora's houseplants crowding the windowsill, the sticky note on the kettle, the small shelf where Nora kept her books mixed in with mine because we'd given up separating them after the first month. She said, "She's told me about you. You know." "Good things or useful things?" I asked. Bex laughed. She describes your routines like she's proud of them. She picked up her glass. Like Daniel always does this, and Daniel always says that. Not annoyed. Just fond, like she knows you really well and it makes her happy that she does. I didn't say anything. I was trying to decide which direction to look. She's not like that with most people, Bex added. Then her phone went off, and she looked down at it, and the moment passed completely, and when Nora came in 5 minutes later, flushed from rushing, the conversation moved on without a seam. But I sat with that for a long time afterwards. Like she knows you really well, and it makes her happy that she does. The thing I had been refusing to examine looked back at me from across the room and waited. She was making toast on a Saturday morning when I came into the kitchen and found her in my shirt. I should have led with that. I told you I was getting ahead of myself. The shirt was a soft gray one I'd had since university, worn thin at the elbows, entirely without dignity. The kind of shirt you wear when there's nobody around to see you in it. I'd left it on the chair by the bathroom door the night before. She'd walked past it. She'd come back for it deliberately, because by the time I was standing in the kitchen doorway, it was tucked into her jeans, and her hair was loose, and she was spreading butter onto toast, with the focused calm of a woman who had made a considered decision. She looked up. She saw me. She did not reach for an excuse. That was the thing I kept coming back to afterward. She did not pretend it was an accident, did not say, "Oh, I grabbed the wrong thing," did not even look startled. She held my look for a moment with an expression that was almost steady. And then she said, quietly, "It's easier than telling you how I really feel." Something happened in my chest, not dramatically, just a small, clean shift, like a drawer sliding into place after years of catching on the frame. I stayed in the doorway. I looked at her. She looked back at me with her jaw slightly set, the way she held her face when she was being brave about something and trying not to show it. "You could tell me," I said, "how you really feel." She set the butter knife down with great care. "That might be more complicated," she said. "We've managed complicated before. This is different, is it?" She held my gaze for 1 second longer than felt safe. Then she looked down at the counter. Her fingers were very still next to the cracked blue phone case she'd set there when she came in, and I thought of the inverted phone, and the 7 words, and her sister saying, "Fond, like she knows you really well," and something I'd been carefully not knowing settled into something I knew. "Nora," I said. I kept my voice even. "You don't have to say anything you're not ready to say. We can eat the toast. We can not talk about this. I want you to know that's an option." She looked up. Her expression shifted, something brief and complicated moving across it. "Is that what you want?" she asked. No, the word came out without the diplomatic packaging I'd prepared for it. She heard that. She was quiet for a moment. Then she let out a small breath, and some of the tension in her shoulders released, and she looked at me directly. "I changed your name in my phone," she said, "about 4 months ago, to something I wasn't supposed to change it to." I waited. "And every time you text me it comes up with that name, and I keep thinking I should change it back. And I don't. Because I like seeing it, and I'm apparently incapable of making good decisions about you." She paused. "That's one of the things. That's the simple one." My chest did something it had probably been doing for longer than I'd admitted. "What's the complicated one?" I asked. "When something good happens," she said, "you're the first person I want to tell." She said it plainly, like a fact she was tired of filing under something else. And when something goes wrong, both directions, it's always you. And I kept waiting for that to change, because it seemed like the kind of thing that should change eventually. But it didn't. It just got more true. She looked like a woman who had finally set down something she'd been carrying in the wrong direction for a long time. "Nora," I said. "I know," she said. "I know it's complicated. I know we live together, and I know what that means if this. I know." "Stop," I said. Not sharply. Gently. "I'm not worried about complicated. You should be. I've been moving furniture across 3 counties for 8 years. Complicated is my primary skill set." She looked at me. And then, quietly, only slightly, in the way her real reactions always came, she laughed. The right kind of laugh. The kind that released something. I crossed the kitchen. I stopped close enough that there was nothing casual about the distance. I looked at her, the sharp face and the loose hair and the gray shirt she'd borrowed because she'd decided at 7 in the morning on a Saturday that she'd run out of safer ways to feel this. "When something good happens," I said, "you've been it for a long time." I just kept calling it something else. She looked up at me. Her fingers closed once around the cracked blue phone case, then stilled. "That's what your name is," she said softly. "In my phone." "What I changed it to?" "Tell me." She did, and I understood why she hadn't changed it back. I reached out and tucked a piece of hair behind her ear, slowly, so she knew it was chosen. She went still. Not dramatically, just still. And then she tipped her head slightly into my hand, the way people do when they have been wanting something for long enough that they've stopped pretending they don't. The toast burned. We discovered this approximately 4 minutes later, when the smoke alarm in the hallway made its opinions known, and Nora said something uncharitable under her breath and opened the window while I fanned the alarm with a folded newspaper. And we stood in the kitchen in the cold November air, with the burnt toast and the gray shirt, and everything that had just happened between us. And she looked at me with smoke-stung eyes and said, "You're going to make me buy new bread." "You stole my shirt," I said. "I borrowed your shirt. You didn't ask. I was making a statement. You were very successful." She handed me half a piece of unburnt toast from the edge of the rack, and she smiled, and that was that. 3 months later, she still had the shirt. I had stopped pretending to want it back. We had settled into the same flat with the same routines and all the same daily mechanics, the kitchen schedule, the good coffee, the films. Except that now when I came home, she looked up from the sofa with a particular expression that I knew was for me specifically, and she had quietly moved the sticky note from the kettle to the bathroom mirror, where it said "don't" to both of us every morning, which she found funnier than I did, which was also exactly right. She changed my name in her phone again, back to just my name. She told me this unprompted one evening and watched my face when she said it. I told her that was probably for the best. She threw a cushion at me with excellent aim. 2 years later, when people ask how we got together, she tells them the shirt story. She tells it with the timing of someone who has practiced it, who knows exactly where the laugh lands, who knows exactly where to pause before the part that matters. I tell them she borrowed a shirt as an act of emotional cowardice and somehow made it the bravest thing anyone has ever done in my kitchen. She says that's not how bravery works. I say I know. That's the part I like. We're both right. The truth of it lives somewhere in the middle, in a gray shirt that still lives in her half of the wardrobe, and a cracked blue phone case she never replaced, and 7 words I caught through a doorway that I kept without knowing what they were for. I think it might be him. It was. It had probably always been. What would you have done if someone told you something that big, in borrowed clothes, at 7 in the morning, before either of you had planned to be brave? And have you ever been the person who found it easier to show something than to say it? Carrying a feeling so long, it stopped feeling like something to confess and started feeling just like you. Tell me your story in the comments. If this one landed, leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.